Welcome to the Spectators Podcast. Here are your hosts, Corey and Jeff.
Welcome, spectators, to episode 2 of season 2, our exciting second season. And as you can see from my facial hair, I'm in a bit of a mood, and we'll get into why I'm in a bit of a mood in a moment. But before we do that, Corey, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a pretty busy weekend, going to the pumpkin patch and doing all the fall and Halloween activities. I'm a huge fan of Halloween myself, so I'm excited to get all this stuff, doing all this stuff before the holidays come, like the Christmas holidays. And the weather's been really nice, so I have no complaints. Last year we went and it was like pouring rain, but this year it was like nice, sunny, good weather. How about you? How are you?
Well, as you can tell from my facial hair, not good.
I want to hear why.
Well, it's going to turn from a Spectators podcast just to Jeff's therapy session. So we'll dive into it. As the spectators will know, we are Canucks fans. Me, very begrudging Canucks fan. It's not been a good start. In the first episode, we said we'd circle back to the Canucks maybe in a few weeks, but it's kind of hard not to discuss the Canucks because they are the laughing stock of the NHL. So yeah, I think I'll just shave and not shave until they win a game, which I'll probably have a beard just like you soon, because it looks like they're never going to win. So before I go into my long, depressing rant session about my life as a Canucks fan, what do you think is going on right now with the Canucks?
Well, I mean, I got to start with the fact that it was funny. We talked about last week, when were the Arizona Coyotes going to have their first win? Are they going to have their first win this season? Unfortunately, they've already won their first game, and the Canucks are still on the losing side of things. So,
positive note for you, though, is that they was against the Leafs, so
fair enough.
Regulation.
Fair enough. You know what? There's been a couple of weird ones this week. They beat the Leafs, and the Seattle Kraken beat the Colorado Avalanche. So, I mean, there's been a couple of weird ones here this week. But in terms of the Canucks, I mean, where do I even start? I mean, from the first game and the second game of just like, not even being able to sustain or withhold a lead at all. They just keep choking like in the third period, and we're seeing breakdowns on the team in so many areas. I'm even seeing breakdowns on the bench. Like I think it might have been the last game or the game before, but Bruce Boudreau got like too many men calls in one game, I think within one period. So, there's definitely a sense of frustration within the entire organization. I think not just the players, but the coaching staff. They're in a bit of a rut right now, to say the least, and I really don't know what can they do at this point with what they have with the team. And the money they got tied up in the team, like, what do they even do? They got to play better hockey, for one. But I guess let's ask you, what do you think? What do you think they can do at this point to turn things around and try to get a few wins out here? Because this is not looking good. This is the worst season start I think I've ever seen since I've been watching them. How about you?
Well, funny enough, they said on the broadcast yesterday that the last time they went 0-3, they're 0-5 now, but the last time they went 0-3, they ended up finishing over 100 points. That was the 09-10 season, so a season before they made the Stanley Cup, but obviously a very different composition of players on that team versus this team.
Right.
I did, before getting into my opinion, I did actually catch a bit of a Twitter poll after the sixth game last night. Asked Canucks fans what they thought. I said, "How are you feeling?" The three responses were angry, wait and see, and don't care anymore. Which one do you think won the poll?
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say don't care anymore. But
You
well,
would be right.
yeah. I feel like
What do you think? What do
there's
you think the percentage was?
over 50%. Let's say 66.7.
You're damn close. 64% don't care anymore.
I'm just gonna
20
say I feel like there is a blanket of frustration over Vancouver right now. Like fans are getting to that point where they're just like, "Are you
Well, there was
serious?"
4 jerseys thrown on the ice last night.
Wow, 4, hey?
Mm-hmm. There was 2 during the broadcast and then 2 more. 1 during the broadcast and then 3 more when fans were leaving. Just to finish out the poll, angry was 25 and wait and see was 11%. So there's out of the respondents I got, there's still a glimmer of hope.
Hey, there's still a tenth of the people that are that are waiting to see. So that's not so bad.
If you look at it subjectively, like, it is only 6 games, right? Like, it's an 82 game season. Like we discussed when we were talking about the Jays when they first started their season. You're like, dude, it's a long season. It's hard to predict, right? And again, looking at it objectively, I'm in a subjective mood. Objectively, it is 6 games. They still got 2 points. Like, they're tied with a lot of teams right now, right? So they can turn around. Even Bruce Boudreau said that when he was with Anaheim, their team went 1-7 and something, and they won the division. But it's hard to compare to other teams, because if you look at this team, it's the same team they brought back. They had last year, right? And yes, they had a good performance underneath Bruce Boudreau when he took over, and really, who knows really what's the contributing factor to that? Were they just happy to have a fresh new face with fresh new leaderships and a new voice? It finally kickstarted them to play a bit better. Okay, I have time for that. 2, did they rely on a goaltender standing on top of his absolutely going insane? And if maybe not for Igor Shesterkin, could have won the Vezina. That's probably, I think, a little bit closer to what we saw last year.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we seeing this year, right? Well, this year I think is a little different in, like, they're doing the same, like we said last podcast, they are doing the same things. They are saying the same things they were saying last year. We're not getting off to good starts. Well, actually, that's not true. They are actually getting leads, but they're blowing it, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said last podcast, you can just feel the stink and the cancer and the cloud over this organization, right? I mean, nothing was more telling last night than Jim Rutherford was on After Hours with Scott Oak, and first of all said, yeah, he's frustrated like everybody else, which is a fair comment, but then has said this nugget, and that my theory is that they didn't want to bring back Boudreau, but for some reason they did. Mm-hmm. He said when he was hired, because he was asked about Boudreau, he said when he was hired as the president, it was his understanding that Boudreau's contract was only for last season.
Right.
There wasn't this option for the season after. And then when said other stuff. So that's pretty telling if that's his response, mm-hmm. of revealing that kind of detail. Why would you reveal that kind of detail if you were happy with your coaching or even want the guy there? I don't think they want Boudreau there. I do not think Boudreau is their coach. And how can a coach, actually we discussed this with Vegas last season before DeBoer got let go, mm-hmm. how can you coach well if you are constantly thinking that you're going to get fired? Or mm-hmm. the management group above you is not happy with you. And it's pretty much letting you know that you're not their guy. You need to prove it you need to change our minds for us to extend you. Like, that's just not a healthy organization. I don't know why they didn't let Boudreau go. Because, again, clearly he's not their guy. Like, Rutherford pretty much confirmed it on Saturday.
Right.
So it trickles down, and now, and then of course now that they're losing again for another season. There's all these rumors about cliques in the dressing room, and it's Miller versus Petey and Bo versus Miller, right? And then during the game, I don't know if you saw this, during the game, at the end of the second period, Luke Shen and Miller were arguing with each other at the end of the period. So it's just so difficult, and like there are so many frustrated fans. Like, even though it's only 6 games, it's been 6 years of this, so it's just difficult for, I think, fans to comprehend and hear. You need to be patient. You need to let things turn around, because we've been doing that for so bloody long.
Mhm.
And even they asked Rutherford about, oh, why don't you just rebuild? And he said, well, you don't really know how long a rebuild takes, right? And like, I think they're too far into this now to rebuild,
Yeah.
right? Like, you've got Pedersen, you've got Hughes, you've got Demko. Like, if you did want to rebuild, like, you're starting from scratch, like they should have done a long time ago, right? Like, this team had their opportunity to properly rebuild. It was back in 2013 when the Canucks got knocked out in the first round from the Sharks. Gillis went to the ownership, said, I think it's time to sell. You've got Kessler, you've got Edler, you've got Hamhuis, you've got Bieksa, lots of pieces that Burrows, like when Burrows actually had value, not for Jonathan Dolan, who's now playing in the SHL. Like, you could have, Luongo, right? I think Schneider was out, not with the team anymore. But you had enough pieces to really do this properly. But the ownership is very short-sighted. They don't really care for doing this properly. And here where we are. That was 2013. We are 2022.
Which
We have
means
made
we're
the
almost 10 years later.
We have made the playoffs twice. One was in the bubble. They won a play-in series with the Wild. Yes, they beat St. Louis. But again, the Dallas Stars made the Stanley Cup final that year. And they weren't that good of a team. Right? Have they made deep playoffs run since then? No. Right? I mean, I think Montreal made it to the anyways. So instead of what I'm getting at is that if you're going to lay blame, and even though it's only 6 games and things could turn around and I could have egg on my face, if you're going to lay blame anywhere, it is at the feet of ownership, and it always has been. I mean, Corey, you're in business, like it's a leadership thing. If you have a good organizational structure with a good leader, things will run smoothly. But if you have someone who's short-sighted, who all they care about is playoff revenue, doesn't want to do things properly, takes constant shortcuts, fires anybody that talks about the word rebuild. He fired Gillis. He fired, even Tortorella said when he got hired, who was Aquilini's hire, by the way, he said that the room was stale and needs to get younger fruit. He got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Linden got fired. Benning didn't get fired because he was a yes man. So, like, I'm sitting here so frustrated today because even like on our season finale, so we talked about this, how tired I am of waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is such a good fan base. Minus the stuff that happened with JT Miller today. Like, JT Miller was harassed today at a pumpkin patch. Like, as frustrated as I am today, it's a sport, people. Like, don't harass people in public. Like, they have a public life, right? Like, he's a hockey player. You can have every right to criticize him when he's on the ice or being criticized by the media, but if he's with his family, leave him alone.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, why it's so difficult for someone like me and you, I imagine as well. Like, it's just the same story each year. We hope to get into the playoffs. And we had all those years of, we want to play meaningful games in March. It's like, or how about you properly rebuild? And then when we're here with Pedersen, Hughes, and Demko, we have somebody, like, we have other players that could play with them. And there, there's Besser, there's Horvat, there's some good players, right? But they've just wasted so much time. They have wasted so much time cutting corners and not doing this properly. Like, look at Detroit, for example, right? Look at Tampa. Tampa sucked. Guess what? Now every single year they're a playoff. Now they're a Stanley Cup contender, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sucked. They drafted right. They got Stamkos. They got Kucherov in the second round, but still, that's good scouting. They got Vasilevsky, right? They took their time, and now every single year it is Eastern Conference Final or Stanley Cup Final for that team. The Canucks did not do that, and now every single year we're like, okay, maybe we'll make the playoffs, or we're not, or we're going to get into a draft lottery system that has hurt this franchise every single year, and get a 5th overall pick, a 6th, like a 10th overall pick, a 15th overall pick, like it's just exhausting and so frustrating, and like am I ever going to see this team win the Stanley Cup? I don't know. And again, I know it's 6 games and things could turn around, but that's what it feels like. So, anyways, that's my rant.
I gotta say, like, this team is interesting and frustrating and can be exciting at times, but we always lead back to that frustrating. And I separated myself more from the team when I saw the light of ownership years ago not making the right decisions, not going into a rebuild, being kind of scared and fearful about going into a rebuild, being ignorant about the idea of a rebuild, and just constant years of frustration. Like, we've put in, both of us probably 20 plus years of time to watch this team, and I remember even sitting down and watching games with my dad when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, like, not caring that much at the time, but just the longevity of time that someone's going to put into a team. You can only deal with so much, and I know there's a lot of frustration with people in sports when you're with a team for a long time, and that's your team, that's your hometown team, and then people kind of judge you when you like a different team. But I've had to do that for my own sanity, not just focusing on this team, because if I was only focusing on this team, I don't know where I would be after walking away a few years ago. And I still pay attention to this team, like I said, and my heart's still there. I still want to see them win. So seeing them being in this position is still frustrating. I don't really understand ownership's perspective, because I think there's a little bit of fear of rebuilding, and the fear stems from, well, if we rebuild, we're going to lose fan base. Well, if you suck, you're going to lose fan base too. If you don't rebuild and you get into a position where you suck, look at where you are now. You are 11 years out from your Stanley Cup run. And, you get to a position now where fans are saying, I'm done. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of looking at the same. They're throwing jerseys on the ice. They're harassing players at the pumpkin patch. There's a lot to it. And you know what? The clique thing about players in the locker room, that's an issue too, and that needs to be handled. And that's part of leadership. That doesn't necessarily mean ownership, but that's part of leadership to figure that out. Do we have the right leaders in place? We've had that question many times over the years, and we talked about this in the summer about going into a new regime and being excited about it, but you almost have that little bit of apprehension being excited about a new regime coming in, because you just don't know. There's just too much uncertainty. Will they turn around the team? Will there be much of a difference? And so far, no. But we're only, like you said, we're only 6 games into the season, right? I don't want to judge them this quick into the season, but I know a lot of fans are starting to get there, and they're going to get to the point where, we get to, week 10 and we get to, November and December, when we hit that kind of mid-season mark, and a lot of people are going to say, this regime wasn't the right decision. They're not going to make any difference on the team. There's going to be that. And maybe there is an issue with Miller. I don't know. You're hearing a lot of here and there with Miller on the ice, and Miller and other players, and Miller in this. You brought it up only 5 minutes ago too. I think, was it the right move to sign him for a long-term contract? I don't think so, but I don't think about just that. I just think, they're not in a position right now to sign players long-term. It doesn't make sense for them to be signing players long-term. They're not in a position to be doing this. And
they see this, and like it's more to me a bit more short-sighted thinking, right? Because from what I can gather, it was in the summer they realized they weren't going to get the asking price they wanted for Miller, so they're like, screw it, we'll just re-sign him. Could they trade him in the future? Maybe. Now we know his cost certainty with his contract. One of the biggest things for Miller that was sort of slowing his trade value was nobody knew what he wanted for his next contract. Well, we know it now. The cap's going up, not this year, but next year. So not next season, but the season after, around $4 million. So is paying a guy like JT Miller what we're seeing in the first 6 games, paying him $8 million seems a little crazy.
Seems a little crazy.
But to go ahead.
I was going to say, here, let me ask you this before I lose my thought here. If I were to ask you 2 different directions, would you rather see this team suck and struggle and be in the case they're at right now? You know, you've seen them the last 5 years. I think the last time before the bubble they made the playoffs was 2015. So that's like 7 years ago. In this last 7 years, would you rather see them in this position that they are now? Or would you feel okay being patient, knowing that they're planning a rebuild, telling you they're planning a rebuild, and being able to bear with a crappy team for, 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons? But you know the purpose of why they're doing it.
So from 2015 to now?
Yeah.
Well, I can give you a case study. Look at the New York Rangers. In that timeline, they literally did an open letter to their fans and said, guess what? We're rebuilding. Look where they are now, right? Caveat is it is New York, folks like Adam Fox and Jacob Trouba will pick places like New York because New York is a destination place, right? So there is a bit of an asterisk there. However, look where they are now. We discussed with them in our first episode that they could be a potential Stanley Cup contender, right? And there's look at that team, right? You've got Artemi Panarin, you've got Alexei Lafreniere, Capo Caco, Igor Shesterkin, right? Like one of the best goaltenders probably maybe in a very long time, right? Russian goaltenders. I think they made the playoffs in 2015. They got knocked out in the first round by Calgary, right? So really, what was that in 5 games? Aquilini got 2 games of playoff revenue. Is it really that much? That's the thing, and I think that's the funniest thing when just how short-sighted it is. In that, okay, well, you wanted to cut corners because you wanted to get back to the playoffs to get your playoff revenue. Well, now look where you are. If you did it properly, like I discussed with the Tampa Bays and the New York Rangers, now every single year for the next 5 to 6 seasons, right? You're in the playoffs, making deep playoff runs. That's a lot of revenue because you don't pay players in the playoffs, right? That's why owners want the playoff revenue so much, right? And I think to finish on this point, we won't belabor it anymore, but to your talk about the locker room and things like that, for me, it's a trickle-down effect, and we discussed a little bit with Vegas, right? Yep. And with the whole Pete DeBoer stuff, right? And him with Robin Lehner, right? Pete DeBoer felt pressure from above because he knew he was going to get fired if it didn't work, right? So he's not in the right frame of mind to coach his players and deal with a player that's going through challenges, right? It trickles down, right? So here we are again, right? And the theory is potentially they couldn't fire Boudreau because the owner said, no, I'm not paying another coach not to coach for our team, even though the owner's the one who signed the bloody guy. It was before Rutherford was even the bloody president, right? So again, trickle down effect, right? Of lack of leadership at the top, and it comes all the way down to the players and the frustration they're feeling now because they're all frustrated, right? As we are, right? And I can imagine a guy like Bo Horvat, right, who has been here the longest out of this whole regime, right? He's seen 4 different coaches since he's been a Canuck, right? And 3 different managers, right? Gillis, Benning and Linden, and then now this regime, right? He's the captain. So it's not good. I'm hoping the next time we chat, we're talking about a win. We're seeing some small changes because the mood from the coach, Bruce Boudreau is usually a pretty positive guy, not very positive. Like he said, he walked into the locker room and said, "You all need to look yourselves in the mirror. This is unacceptable." That's pretty damning from a guy who last season was Mr. Positive and was trying to say let's do it game by game and week by week. It's a very concerning mood with this hockey team right now, and It's very painful to be a Canucks fan, to be honest, because we are so loyal, right? Like we fill that building year after year after year. Like we watch this team religiously. We we have 600 different newspaper and blogs because we're so passionate. We love our team so much. Like we deserve a Stanley Cup. We don't deserve this. Anyways, any final thoughts before we move on?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Honestly, like I think it's very difficult. This organization and this city has very loyal fans. They have for a really long time. We do have zealots of the building regularly, and you know what? For the fans' loyalty to the organization itself, yeah, the fans are definitely deserving of a winning team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just want to see them go in the direction that you believe, but with this ownership, I don't foresee anything changing, at least not in the foreseeable future, because they saw the light, they see what other teams are doing, they can recognize what they're doing wrong, but they continue to do the same thing, and that shows me that they're not learning from their mistakes. So, in turn, I don't see them really going anywhere, and I understand that there are teams out there, like, just to throw an example, like the Chicago Cubs, who didn't win a World Series for 100 years, or the New York Rangers,
Please no,
who didn't. The Rangers didn't win a cup for I think 50 years or something like that. But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say this team folds before that happens. I don't think that this team could withstand, or the NHL will withstand a team going 100 years without getting there. But I mean, who knows? I mean, it's already been 52 years since they've been in the NHL. So
if they can put up with Arizona being the literal dumpster of the NHL, I'm sure they can put up with the Vancouver Canucks.
But at least they have a win this season.
They do have that on us. But before we switched over to WWE, there's one thing I wanted to quickly discuss with you. I'm finding really interesting, and I wanted to get your perspective on. So, as you all remember, the draft in Montreal, the big shock pick of Juraj Slafkovsky going first overall, and then Shane Wright dropping to the Seattle Kraken at number 4. So as training camps went on, both of them weren't really having, so Slafkovsky for Montreal and Wright for the Seattle Kraken, they didn't really have them notable camps. So I was thinking, okay, well, Slafkovsky will go to the AHL and Wright will go back to the OHL, which makes sense. Slafkovsky's coming from Slovakia, and Wright missed an entire season of development in the OHL. Like, there'd be no shame in sending either of them down. I mean, like, Slafkovsky's going to be in Laval. He's not going to be very far from the Montreal Canadiens. But
yeah, no, not at all.
Both of them started on their teams this year. I mean, Montreal is not really striving to be amazing this year. I think they're shooting for next year, and then of course, Seattle I think is trying to be good, but I think they're recognizing they're not going to be that good this year. So, and I'm just like, so I've seen that their first, I think, 3 or 4 games each of them have played. Like, Wright and Slafkovsky both have been healthy scratches in one or more game. And I think Slafkovsky's playing a bit more, but Wright's playing fourth line 5-6 minutes a night. He did get an assist against the Avalanche, I think.
He did get his first point against the Avalanche, yep.
So my question is like, is this where they should be? Like, is this good for them, or should they have gone down and just had a full season of development? I mean, for Slafkovsky, he can come back and up, no problem. Wright will lose for the whole season, of course, because he goes down to the juniors, and then once you send a junior age player down, you can't get him back. But yeah, I wonder if that was the right call for both player when they could be playing more minutes in their developmental leagues.
Well, there's 2 different perspectives with Montreal versus Seattle. They're 2 completely different teams, different situations, and different external pressures. Montreal is the market that, their fans are very passionate, like Vancouver, even more passionate. And I think they probably have a better understanding of Slafkovsky going down and potentially coming back up when they need him, or maybe just developing down there at the time within North America. I'm playing in North American hockey. Seattle's point of view and perspective is a little different because they came out to a first year where they're competing against the most recent expansion team, and I think fans had a lot, with being Vegas, and the fans had a lot of expectation that they were going to have a pretty decent season last year, and they tanked it. They didn't do very well at all. I think the pressure's on in Seattle. I think it always has been from day one when Seattle got a team. I think there's always going to be that scare that can we make this sustainable? Can we maintain having a team in Seattle? They don't want to lose their team, their team again. And I think that, you know, they made the call to bring Wright up because, well, you know, we got to bring fans in. We've got to show that we're trying to develop our players. And I don't know if it was the right approach, but I do think there is a little bit of like external pressure that they're putting on themselves in that sense. Maybe their sponsors, maybe the NHL, maybe their fans. I don't know. But I think there is a bit of pressure they're putting on themselves to do things. I do believe they still have that timeline where, you know, is it 9 games that they can have them play and then they can send them back down? So maybe they're just trying to do that. But from what I'm seeing, like when Matty Beniers came up last year, after he was drafted the first draft, right? He had quite a strong call up, and he did pretty well. But he had some time to develop in college before he got called up last year. Wright, on the other hand, like I've been watching him play, and he looks a little slow. He looks a little weaker compared to he's not developed yet. He's not. I don't look at Wright and be, oh yeah, he's like Connor McDavid. He's fitting right in as soon as he's not. Not even close. Not even at the same idea. He looks right now like he's out of place. He's not playing horribly, but he's, like you said, he's only getting 5-6 minutes of ice time in a night. Maybe that's not enough for him to develop. But if that's the case, that you can't have him more than 5 or 6 minutes a night, then have him play back in the OHL like he was before. Have him develop a little bit more, give him that extra season that he missed, and he'll come up more seasoned, more experience. But on the offhand, that maybe they're worried that if he's back playing with younger kids again, younger kids, then I think, you know, he's playing with an undeveloped group, and maybe they're scared. The organization is worried that he's going to come up and he's going to look the same as he's playing now, where he looks very out of place. Like, he just doesn't look as tough as he could. He's not as developed as he could be. He's not taking hits well. He's, you know, he's just not there. And it's totally understandable. The kid's 18 years old. Like, you're not every 18-year-old is going to come to the NHL and be able to
look at Lafreniere last
play
year.
well.
So, yeah.
Look at Lafreniere, right? And you know, but I will say, like, I saw Lafreniere play last year, and I see Wright play this year, and Wright looks even more underdeveloped than Lafreniere did. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would say the best bet is to put him down, have him play in the OHL. So maybe they'll do that after 9 games. I don't know. But Slavkovsky, on the other hand, like, if they're only going to be able to send him to the AHL and not have to send him to the OHL, like, they can call him back up at any point. I don't see what's the big deal. So maybe they're both playing the 9 games, seeing how they do, and then get sent down. But we said it in the summer. It's a weaker draft than it has been over years prior. It wasn't the strongest of drafts, especially compared to the one coming. So, you know, I honestly, I'll be frank with you, I didn't even think either of them were going to make the team after camp. I didn't think so. I thought after camp they would all both be sent down for more development, but I was wrong. They're both on there, and we'll see where it goes. I think Seattle's trying to do their best to really be better than they were last season.
And you're right. I think giving Wright the 9 games is not a bad idea. Let's just see how he does. Right, throw him in and see how he does. And yeah, I just, for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense when you can send him back to the OHL. He can play top minutes, top power play. He can play for Team Canada, play with Bedard, win a gold medal. Right, like, really push his development forward, and then come back next year 1 year older, 1 year stronger. Then for Slavkovsky, like, why not give him top line minutes at Laval? He's down the street from you. But I mean, he's playing a bit more, I think, with Montreal than he is than Wright is with Seattle. So like, I think I see more of an argument for Slavkovsky to play with Montreal than I do Wright with Seattle, because I do think Seattle. You're right. I think Seattle is trying to win. I think there's some pressure because last year didn't start off like Vegas.
No. As to be expected,
So
I don't think you're gonna look at a team and think, hey, an expansion team is gonna make that much of a splash in the first couple of years.
Yeah.
They're not. But I think they put that
It's
own
unrealistic.
they put that own pressure on themselves. That they had to. And even when I was telling you last time, like Vegas's commentating team had mentioned, like Seattle, where they placed last year, was to be expected of an expansion team. Even to them, Vegas was just an outlier. Like they weren't supposed to do what they did the first year, and it was miraculous on their part, honestly.
Yeah, so I think Seattle will be a team. Like once it gets closer to the deadline, they'll start selling, and I think because it makes sense to me. Like, why not try and get Bedard, or Fantilli? I mean, I don't think they'll want Michkov, but because of the weight. But yeah, so Seattle will be an interesting team. But I just thought that was a really interesting development that I've seen with these two picks. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Like, I guess my guess will be that he'll get his 9 games right, and he'll probably go back down. And I think Slafkovsky will stick around. I think there's more room probably actually to develop him on the NHL roster. I mean, look at Bo Horvat's an example, right? Like he came out, played fourth line minutes with Derek Dorsett and Victor Oreskovich, I believe.
Right.
And he's turned into a pretty fine player. So there is ways to do it. And again, the pressure in Montreal to win is not as high as it is in Seattle. So we'll see what happens there. Anywho, we'll move on to our second favorite topic, which is professional wrestling. And forgot to mention off at the top, but please hit the subscribe button. Please give us a like and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So we're moving on to the world of professional wrestling, and it's been a quiet week, I think, versus
compared
what
to
we were
most.
seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not obviously the White Rabbit stuff's done. No backstage fights with AEW. So it's been a pretty quiet week when it comes to professional wrestling. So what's caught your interest this week in the world of professional wrestling?
Well, I think it's been a really interesting week in terms of not being interesting. And I find it funny because we've had so many weeks in a row now where we've had speculations of returns, surprise returns, vignettes, a lot of things going on, backstage brawls, etc. You name it, all the drama that there can be. And this week was not a lot of drama. There wasn't a lot going on, and I think that was kind of funny. It was interesting to see that it can calm down, and you know, it's calmed down a little sooner than I expected. The only thing that really happened this weekend was just the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view from an NXT yesterday. And I didn't really watch too much of it. I kept to see, but what I noticed is not many things happened. Not a lot of title changes. I think only the North American title was the only one that actually changed hands yesterday. But most things stayed the same, and we did not see Theory involved at all in the NXT title at the end, which there was some speculation for this past Tuesday on NXT. I think they were hinting at it a little bit. I know Kevin Owens was there, Theory was there. There was a lot going on, so we kind of have that expectation that he might be there. Nope, nothing suspect. Now I wonder, with that, is that a game Triple H is playing? Like, oh, now we think, Theory's not really doing anything. He's got a really big loss streak. He hasn't been able to cash in yet. Maybe he won't cash in. Then they have you think of the perspective that maybe he's going to cash in on NXT, and he doesn't, and he's not even around at the scene. So maybe that's some speculation that we're making you think he might go for NXT, and then he'll show up when you least expect it, which might be possible. So we have seen that with Money in the Bank cash-ins before, that they've come when you absolutely least expect it. And those lead for some good ones because they come out of nowhere and you are really surprised, but then that person kind of gets their own break. They get their big break, right? I have heard some speculation that there are rumblings that maybe there's some thought about Theory defending this Money in the Bank now as like a title.
It makes sense.
And I heard the names that might be involved are Kevin Owens and Johnny Gargano and Theory in a triple threat match. and that's why they've been doing so much storytelling with Gargano, and Owens has been really tight with Gargano. So there's some speculation that could be the case in a triple threat. That would make for something interesting, and maybe that's the way to put Theory over too. Maybe he doesn't lose the Money in the Bank, so you actually see at that point, like, is he worthy of holding on to it? Because there's been a lot of questions from the locker room and everybody else about him just being kind of handed it, and if he can retain it, maybe that gives him some notoriety that he can actually cash in at some point. Or you go another route and you have him lose it to someone like Kevin Owens or Gargano, who are both on a face run right now. So it could really go either way. But from what I saw, I mean, NXT performed well. It had a good performance, and it was kind of nice to not have any drama this week, and we could just kind of take everything in stride. And I mean, the only drama I guess I heard was that it sounds like CM Punk is at that point of having an inevitable release.
A buyout, yeah.
A buyout, yes. Sorry, not release, but buyout, yeah. So nothing's been confirmed yet, but I think that's where everything's sitting at this point.
Yeah, it's pending legal, so we're still constantly waiting, right? Because I mean, like the Elite hasn't come, like I said last week. The Elite hasn't come back either, right?
And there's been no word about them actually, which has been interesting.
No, which I think they can't. I think it's a legal situation. I don't know exactly what it is, who's suing who, or was a crime committed. I mean, assault sounded like happened.
Yeah.
There was some biting involved. A dog was being saved, apparently. Crazy stuff. But yeah, I think that is like on the AEW side. Well, there's a few things on the AEW side, actually. We didn't cover it last time we talked, but I think it's a bit of a heartbreak for you and I, because I think you and I are hoping that Chris Jericho was going to come back to WWE, but he signed a 3-year extension.
He did.
With AEW, which I'm happy for AEW. I think, like we said last time, I think you're really seeing the Phoenix rise from the ashes of the All Out situation, right? You've got Jon Moxley really wrestling well, cutting some pretty good promos with MJF. You've seen MJF make a massive resurgence and cut some killer promos, and he's looking pretty good in the ring too. And yeah, Chris Jericho is on his
workhorse.
Yeah, he's on his ROH tear of just, I think he wants to fight every single former ROH champion.
So
I believe
he wants to have every former Ring of Honor champion face him, so he can show that he's the best Ring of Jericho champion that's ever been a thing. And he's beat quite a few already. I think every week he's been facing somebody, and he's been winning so far. We had the whole debacle between Daniel Garcia and Daniel Bryan, and we thought Daniel Garcia was going to turn on Jericho, and turns out he's loyal to him and the JAS, and he actually turned on Bryan Danielson, and then he next week he shared his loyalty to Jericho, and now we've got 2 titles in that group, where we had the 2-3 titles in the Bullet Club group, or whatever they're called. Bullet Combat Club. Yeah.
Well, and I think I've said this. I don't know if I said this to you before, but I find his faction the most hilarious, because like if you look at the typical wrestling factions, they have a fancy name like Imperium or the Bloodline or Blackpool Combat Club and Bullet Club and things like that. His faction is literally Jericho Appreciation Society. It's about him, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And I think it's the funnest faction, I think, in professional wrestling. The Brutes are pretty fun, but like I think it's just like his character and the demeanor and things like that. I think it's a really fun faction. I just love the name of it, because it's about me.
It's about him, and he plays that ultimate heel. Like, you look at him and you look at his faction, and what his faction consisted of. Well, there were some original members of the Inner Circle that came back and joined the JAS. But what has Jericho been able to do? He's been able to kind of be that villain and convince others to join his army, and it's not out of
a wizard.
Because he's a wizard, man, and because he's Canadian, But I think really it's cool, because you have other people who join factions like Judgment Day or Imperium, because they see what the faction is doing, and they are able to say, hey, I want to be a part of that. The JAS is just, well, man, Jericho can get me over. He knows what he's doing, and like it's just like let's appreciate Jericho. Let's be there for Jericho and be loyal to just him specifically. And it's led to some funny acts. I just like how he's able to have a faction, and he's able to have both comedy and seriousness to it, and he's be able to kind of balance that right. I really like that. That he's been able to do that. So
Well, clearly Roman Reigns should take some lessons from him, Because there's no insubordination in the JAS.
there is no insubordination apparently. We thought it might be, but we were wrong. But let's move on to that. I'd love to hear your perspective of Friday Night SmackDown, the last week really of what happened with Raw and the Usos and Sami Zayn, because we haven't seen Roman Reigns. Maybe that's why we've led to some insubordination.
He's back next Friday.
He is back next Friday, along with a couple others might be back next Friday. I can't remember who, but I heard there might be some others. Maybe Brock Lesnar might be back next Friday. I can't remember.
Lesnar probably will be on Monday too.
Monday, sorry, yeah.
Actually, a quick aside. Crown Jewel is going to be really funny, and I think we'll probably discuss Crown Jewel next week because it'll be closer to that card. But like for me right now, Crown Jewel is just a bunch of big beefy men slapping each other around because you've got Lashley versus Lesnar, and then now you've got Omos versus Braun Strowman. But yeah, no, it's funny we talked about no drama. We've got some kayfabe drama when it comes to the Bloodline. So I think since Clash at the Castle, when we had our season finale, we talked about the addition of Solo and things like that, right? And hoping, as annoyed we are as Roman didn't lose the belts, I said I'll be happy with it if it means that the crumbling up the Bloodline. And my God, are we seeing just this I think they're doing it so well. They're doing it so slow. They're giving you these little tidbits every now and then. Like one time you think, oh, everything's good. Like we're good. Sammy's the honorary Uce, which the honorary Uce ceremony was phenomenal. Like you thought that they're all gonna beat him up and all that stuff, right? But no, he gets an honorary Uce shirt, right? Like, and now Solo Sikoa's here, and he's loving everyone's loving Sami Zayn except Jay. Right, so it's been one of my favorite things to watch from WWE, and I'm liking a lot of things that WWE are doing. But I think not only are they putting on good matches, like Solo's having some good matches, Zayn's having some really good matches, right? The Usos actually haven't done that much except defend against the Brutes.
That's okay because, as we said before, they had been working and working while Roman was away. So I don't mind that. I don't mind them getting a bit of a break and being able to do promos here.
A quick aside too, they're 24 days away, the Usos, from breaking the New Day's record. So I was actually doing some math. November 11th, which is Remembrance Day here in Canada, you'll probably see a New Day versus Usos match to sort of solidify that record, which they're going to win. Please don't give the New Day their tag titles again. We don't need another long run. I think the Usos right now deserve it, as much as I know you and I have griped about it. There hasn't been a tag team quite yet that has shown it. But anyways, back to the Bloodline. They are doing so much, for me, tremendous acting. They are showing every single member has their own personality. You're seeing so many intricacies with everyone's interactions, right? And I think, to be honest, the superstar for me is Jay. And it's reminding me a lot of the Jay back in 2020 when Roman had to get him into the Bloodline, right? And they're teasing this whole thing of is Jay going to bring the Bloodline down? Or is it going to be Sammy, right? There's just so many intricacies, thank you, in this storyline that they wouldn't have to wrestle for the next month, and I would eat it up. Right, the backstage segments are great. I think it's actually really helped Roman too. You get to see his sociopathic side again. Right, it was getting pretty stale. Right, with before all of this, it was just he'd come out, kind of promo, I'm amazing, I'm God, and then he smashes someone, right? Which was so boring. And now it's just there's all these dynamics, right? He's mad at Jay again. He's made Sammy the the leader now, right? Even though he's not family, right? Like there's so many pieces in there. So I'm really really enjoying it. And so how are you liking and I know you've watched the Bloodline from the beginning, so
Yeah.
I'm curious how you are liking this sort of, for me, a resurgence of it.
Can I just say and give Sami Zayn a massive shout out for the work that he's doing, the entertainment that he's providing for us. Like I gotta say,
Every week.
he is amazing, and
Hmm.
it just goes to show you. Let's go back to the pre Triple H era. Sammy wasn't
Hmm.
getting a lot of time. You think about like how he kind of made himself into the Money in the Bank, kind of didn't really get anywhere with it, but still had a
Hmm.
little bit with the Bloodline. But then when Triple H really came, they finally gave him an opportunity to show himself in the ring. They gave him an opportunity to show himself on the mic, and man, is he talented. We always said it, and
Hmm.
like we talked about this months ago about them giving a chance to people like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, but man, he's doing great work. Just great work binding and gluing that bloodline together right now, and I think it's fantastic. I love seeing
But like
the
like
fighting,
pulling it apart, yeah, pulling it apart, but also like keeping it together. You know what I
pulling it
mean? Like
apart, but
when
not intending to. You know,
yeah,
he's
like
it's like
when Roman went after Jay, and then he stepped in and said, "No, it's okay, I got it." Like it's just like he's like what I find the most, sorry to cut you off. What I find most fascinating about Sammy is he's supposed to be a heel, but you can just see like he's not good at it because he's a face. He's a face
that's
trying to be a
exactly what
heel.
I was gonna say. I was gonna say
Yeah.
he is 100% playing a heel role, but he
Hmm.
is so over with the fans. Like it's incredible to see a face heel reaction like that when you have truthfully. He's supposed to be playing a heel. He's supposed to. Everything he's doing is heelish, but the fans are
Hmm.
eating it up. Like they are loving
Hmm.
him. And it's great because I now you have that situation where you have a lot of directions you can go with this group afterwards. Like you can take Sammy and you can move Sammy into a heel or a face role later on. You can have him tag. You can have him be part of the. It doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
But I think they have so many directions that they've gone because of the great work that Sammy's done. Some of the work that Roman's done behind the scenes, and they have a lot of this. Oh, me and Roman have been talking. Me and Roman have been saying this. We had a call today, and it's all been behind the scenes, right? So they're doing a lot of good
Yeah.
behind the scenes work. What I think Triple H really shines, like where his brilliance shines, is backstage. So all those
Hmm.
backstage segments that are going on between Bray's segments, the promos, the vignettes, the work that you see the wrestlers talking in the backstage area.
Parking lot.
This really reminds you of like ruthless aggression era. You know, when Triple
Hmm.
H was in his prime, and he's really bringing up some of that experience, and he knows what works. And I think that's what made the show so much more entertaining. Because I look back at Friday's episode, and I was like, the matches were subpar, but the show
They were good.
itself,
Hmm.
the show itself was what made it. Like there were so many good
Stories.
segments, the stories, everything else has really made it more entertaining. Um, and they've got a few good storylines going on. Um, which two of them I actually want to get your opinion on here, if you don't mind me asking here. But the first one is this whole Rey Mysterio situation and where they've kind of taken him from kind of playing a mid card talent with his son and everything. And the whole idea was split them up so Dom can have more attention, right? Dom was like, "Oh, you're holding me back" and everything. It almost is like Dom was holding him back. Ray still
Mm.
has the superstardom. He's still so over with the fans. But
That
now,
match he had with the four way, and that final move before he did the frog splash to
uh-huh.
Ricochet was insane. I haven't seen Ray do that
and
in my time watching him.
and I don't know if you saw his match with Kaiser, but another really
No,
good
it was good.
match. It was another good match. So, like, what do you think about Ray? Do you think he's deserving? Do you think that you'd like to see him win the IC title and do another last
Hmm.
run in the WWE, or do you think this is kind of just another ploy to get the Bloodline involved? Or sorry, not the Bloodline. Sorry, the
JD.
Judgment Day involved, and we're gonna have this happen. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think I want Ray to win. Um, Like, I want him to feud with with Imperium for a while. Like, 'cause I think he'll be really good for all of them because they're all new to the main roster, obviously, right? Um, right. I think he'll be good for like him to work with the younger talent and help get them over. I think he should take the title off of Gunther,
Mhm.
and then because they haven't, I don't think it'll happen at Crown Jewel. Like
No.
you would think they would have announced it by now. They do have next Friday, and then because next Friday will be a double taping, because they're obviously not taping on November 4th, because that's the day before the Crown Jewel. So who knows? They could announce it. I imagine he'll face Vinci next week because he fought Kaiser this week. But no, like I think it was good for, you know, the storyline with him and Judgment Day was getting quite stale, right? It was the same cookie cutter. Eventually you just get tortured by it. So it'd be nice to see him win the IC title because I think it would reward him for some of the work he was doing with the Judgment Day and putting them over, right? Because with him and Edge, the whole goal was to put Judgment Day over, right? And they are now. They're quite over. They get quite a bit of heat, specifically Dom on the mic, right? So I think they've done some tremendous work there. So Edge can hang out with Beth and hang out for a while, and then so I'm sure Beth's gonna go after Rhea at some point for the concerto. So I think for me, like, have Ray spend some time on SmackDown, have some good, and I think eventually, maybe it's Survivor Series, maybe it's the Rumble. You have Dom injected back into that storyline. Because I foresee, to me, it's a Mania match, WrestleMania match, where it's him versus Dom. Like you have to have that match.
And that might even be a title match. I could see that being something that could really put Dom over. In that sense. The second thing I was going to ask you was this whole resurgence of Baron Corbin. No more Happy Corbin, no more King Corbin. Baron Corbin. We're back to that. And now he's got and by no means does Baron Corbin honestly need a mouthpiece. But just to see him have somebody like JBL is an ultimate heel. And, just hearing his words of Baron Corbin as a modern day wrestling god and just bringing whole that storyline, I think
the suit that JBL was wearing was very heel because it annoyed the hell out of everybody. The pants that were way too big. Sorry, continue.
But otherwise, I mean, JBL is the perfect person to put with him because, I think, like I said, he doesn't need a mouthpiece, but putting him with someone like JBL, who always was such a good, speaker. He articulates himself so well. I'm just really excited to see where this goes because I think Baron Corbin was getting Happy Corbin, was getting really stale. I was kind of bored with him. He did a lot of work with putting people over as well, I think, and I think he deserves some push, and I think they're going to give him a big push now. So I'm really curious to see where he goes. What do you think about the whole resurgence of Baron Corbin and now being back to himself?
No, I like it, and you're seeing a huge trend of that, right? Like Tommaso Ciampa's missing. I don't know where he is, but Ciampa. I'm trying to think.
He's in Loomis's basement.
Loomis is another example, right? Like there's these people that H are bringing back, bringing back either like old people who got released or bringing back. So now it's Matt Riddle, right? Now it's Tommaso Ciampa hasn't come back yet, but now it's Austin Theory, right? Like he's bringing back some of these things. But what I really like about, I mean, I haven't seen Corbin much on the mic, but it's, we can't forget this is like, as much as this is about wrestling, it's also sports entertainment. It's about stories. And I think bringing in more managers is a fantastic thing because that's another personality you get to interact with on every weekend. Like you can't get any better than JBL when it comes to being a heel, right? So I think, he doesn't need the mouthpiece, but I like it. I like it from a sports entertainment perspective because now whoever he feuds with, right, JBL can be his mouthpiece. Like, it's, MVP accepted Omos's match for him, right? Like that kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, but maybe it's Braun Strowman after he beats Omos and goes, okay, like JBL's like, well, Corbin's a better fighter than you, so he'll fight you tonight. And then Corbin's like, sure. Right? Like that kind of stuff. Like that I really like. I think we need more of it, right? Like, I'm hoping at some point they also restore GMs because Adam Pearce is gone. I haven't seen him in a long time.
They mentioned his name on Friday when DeVille was having a title match, or not a title match, a match she was having against Liv, and they were talking about how she's had a rough year, and she used to be an official, and she used to work with Adam Pearce, so they brought up his name. So he's still obviously around in backstage, and I think actually one of the segments where they had to pull people apart, I think I did see Adam Pearce at some point. I don't remember where.
He's doing some of that stuff. Actually, funny enough, when Lesnar and Lashley were going on it, Mustafa Ali was out there too, actually breaking it up. Actually, it was quite funny.
Yeah, I did see that.
But speaking of Mustafa Ali, so last thing I want to chat about quickly is, what do you think about this? Where the direction of the U.S. title is going? Because now you've got, I'm hoping it's done with Riddle. I don't want to see Riddle and Rollins anymore. Like, they've had really good matches. I've enjoyed it, but let's move on. But you had that segment on Raw where, like, Elias cost Riddle the title, you would argue. And then Mustafa Ali came out and saved Riddle from being attacked. So you've got like 3 and 4 people attached to this U.S. title, which I think is really fascinating. So what do you kind of think about that, and where do you think maybe the U.S. title is heading?
Well, I'm happy Elias is back. The
Yes.
Ezekiel character was getting a little stale, although I did like it. But I'm happy to see Elias back. I'm happy he got involved in that match. But like, you kind of saw him get annoyed when he was trying to do his concert, and then Riddle came out, and I think they had a backstage interview, and Elias had said, like, it kind of pissed me off that Riddle came out, but like, he had good intentions. Okay. So he said it was frustrating, but he's like, but the kid has good intentions, so it's all right. But then he started talking about Seth and said, like, Seth better watch his back, and he doesn't need to get involved where things, and he's the one who he was really frustrated with, because he interrupted Elias intentionally. Like, he wanted to make it bad, so that's why he got him back. And I think Mustafa Ali, he's talented. I think he deserves a chance against Seth.
He had a good match against Lashley.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's gonna beat Seth, because I think Seth's too much of a heel, and I think Seth will retain that title. But Mustafa Ali will get his chance, which is great. I don't know if they're going to be at Crown Jewel, but I think that is what the plan is.
I think we'll find out on Monday. I think this week coming up we'll finalize Crown Jewel, because I don't think they like to necessarily announce matches too late.
Yes.
Before that, I think the Halloween episode on Raw would be a little too late. I think they did it for SummerSlam. Yeah. But after that, I haven't seen them do any more last minute. So I think by next Friday, we'll have a good sense of the matches. I think they have 5 set out now.
5.
And under the H regime, we've only ever had 6 match cards. Yeah. That was at Crown Jewel and at Extreme Rules. They might do more because it's Saudi Arabia and all the crap. But anyways,
they gotta have a good show. They gotta have a good show. They gotta have a good card. They gotta have a good showing, because they want to continue with the business with Saudi Arabia and building their fan base out in the Middle East and things like that. But the last point the last point I was going to say was just that I think, all the time that Elias has been around, he's never ever had a title opportunity, regardless of what title. And I think Elias can be a really, really strong mid-card guy that can really hold up the card. And fans, after he left and came back as Ezekiel, and then left again and then came back as Elias, like, he's really over with the fans right now, and he's not a heel. So I think, like, I would love to see him go for a U.S. title contention and win and hold that title for a little while. I think he'd be a great fit for that.
So my prediction is that Ali or Elias will take the title off of Rollins, because I am just getting the sense that Rollins is heading for Roman.
I think so.
It's going to be really interesting after Crown Jewel, because you only have 3 weeks until Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty quick turnaround for a pay-per-view. And I think it's one of the reasons maybe why they canceled day one. But anyways, because I don't know. I've got this feeling, because when Survivor Series, when it's happening, it'll be the 10-year anniversary of the Shield.
Yeah.
And how appropriate would it be if Rollins took... I think Rollins will take one off of Roman. I don't think he'll take both. I think they want Roman to have the Universal Championship up until past Mania.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also potentially have Rollins face him at Royal Rumble again, because that's where they had their match. And
true.
Again, outside of Jey Uso and Rollins are the only 2 people that haven't lost to Roman.
Yeah.
Because I think it was an I Quit match, but Jay quit because he attacked Jimmy. I can't remember the other match they had, but he didn't technically. He beat Jimmy, but it wasn't legitimate. And then he got disqualified against Rollins. So I don't know. We'll see. Because I'm excited for a Ali Rollins match. I think that'd be a very, very good match. Almost pay-per-view level like match. And maybe they'll save it for Survivor Series because not everyone can be in War Games, right? So
they may even have a crown jewel. We don't know. It could happen. We might find out tomorrow.
They could. It'd be kind of cool to do the triple threat match at Crown Jewel. I think that actually would be a really cool match.
That would be really cool.
And it's about pomp and circumstance for Crown Jewel too. So maybe they'll do it.
And I think if Seth does get involved with Roman, this could be where we see Jay get involved for the bad. Get Jay get involved for the worse, and kind of play it like it was an accident, but screw Roman over somehow, and then Seth wins the WWE title or something like that.
Well, I mean, it makes more sense to me to Survivor Series ladder match. Both belts are up there. Both guys fight for it. Both guys fall with one belt. That's how makes sense to me. The other thing is, the other crazy thought I had was at Crown Jewel, Theory cashes in. Paul gets his one hit on Roman, and then gets his hit on Theory, and then pins Theory for both. It won't happen. There's no way Theory's. There's no way funny. Paul's walking away with both belts. But there's my crazy fan theory that could happen.
You never know.
Anyways, we'll stop there for now. I think it's been a good episode. We had some good chats. I feel lighter after my rant about my existence as a Canucks fan, and I think for the rest of time until they win a Stanley Cup, I will probably constantly question that. So thanks everyone for listening. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe on YouTube. On the audio side, please subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and please leave a star or written review there. But as I always say, my beautifully bearded friend, thanks for chatting with me.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Catch you at the next one.